Hello, tunnel heads. It's Chris in Russia, and I'm just doing a video as I'm gonna read some draft writing I've done. Get some feedback. See that my hair's a bit different, and I've got a little bit of time now because everyone's out of the house. It's quiet for once, apart from the ticking clock behind the camera. Okay, so I've started writing a bit while I'm here, just in my spare time. I've only done about 2,467 words. Started yesterday, so I'm just gonna read it and then see what any of you think, I guess. It's quite raw and unedited at the minute, so bear that in mind, I suppose. Okay. Why am I even doing this? Stream of consciousness. All writing is a sort of performance. You put on a mask but they use words instead of different faces. And after all, lying is fun and creative in its own perverse sort of way. Writing is so often the creative act of lying or creating a fiction to unveil the truths that are there in the big cosmic void. Sometimes I think I should be a comedian instead of trying to think deeply or be a philosopher. I almost balk every time I write the words, I am a philosopher. It just seems like such a self-absorbed, pretentious way of describing oneself. A bit like saying, I'm an artist or I'm a poet. But then I suppose this is all a result of overthinking anyway. Maybe anything truly creative really is a perfect mix of anxiety and originality. The whole tortured artist trope. Shit. Need to be more original than that. Need more anxiety. Peace is no place to write from. Has anyone ever felt at peace? I mean, truly? I know a few have claimed to have experienced such a state, but often they were just on a mood-enhancing drug, so you can't really trust it, really. Well, I don't know. It's all a bit of fun, isn't it? Sort of exercise and keeping boredom at bay, at least, even if it is a bit pretentious and arty-farty. What's wrong with that, anyway? Taking a keen interest in your own mental processes. I guess that's how we grow and evolve as human beings. So right, it's good mental exercise. Even if you think it's all shit, a lot of it will be. This probably really is, but fuck it. This is a stream of consciousness, not fucking War and Peace. So the structure of it so far is I'm just writing short little stream of consciousness or little philosophical essays or essays, just sort of stream of consciousness snippets of thought. High and preferably not dry. Confessions of a 33-year-old Radiohead fan. High haiku. You feel higher than the sky, but how high is the sky? Shit, I'm high again. I guess I should write a little bit about humanity's desire to get off its tits, to get high, to snort the white lines, to puff the magic dragon, to go loose in the sky of diamonds. And why? For the hell of it. Just get the mundane office job and get royally bantered? Probably all the above, I guess, and for some even to cleanse those doors of perception, to wipe all the clutter from the hard drive of the mind. And the soul, perhaps. I've had my fair experience of experimentation with drugs, mostly smoking weed, hash throughout my life, a little bit of experience with MDMA and some stronger psychedelics like salvia, as well as the boring stuff they prescribe you when you're a bit mad, as I am. I recall one of my first encounters with the drug, counterculture, McKenny Leary et al., was via Howard Marks, a legendary dope dealer who got in trouble in the 70s for smuggling legendary amounts of weed. He was known as Mr. Nice until he was caught and imprisoned. Well, he picked up a marvellous compilation he put together called Dope Stories, which compiled a bunch of writings, both good and bad, in between people's experiences of all manners of substances. It was really interesting reading turning on to the idea that drugs, as well as having the potential to be a really negative substance, also have the potential to open up new mental avenues and were not as bad, black and white, as we were all conditioned to believe. And I do believe that it is just that. Conditioning informs a lot of our black and white thinking about drugs. As Bill Hicks once said, if you really hate all drugs, take all the great music that's informed your life throughout the years, take it outside and burn it. As all those musicians that made that great music that made your life better were really fucking loaded, to paraphrase. Drugs, like anything in life that's good and bad, have upsides and downsides. Anyone of any sort of experience getting out of it can attest. Even doing the legal shit is going to have some negative effects, sometimes even the worst. Smoking is not known to be good for you, for example. Drug culture can be overly preachy conversely in the other direction. Weed cures all illnesses and the like, so it's a two-way street. I just really wish we lived in a culture that could take a mature look at substances, treat people who misuse them seriously as ill people and not criminals, and allow adults the responsibility to do their bodies or minds what they want. Now, of course, you could argue that society or the social body has a responsibility to steer people away from anything that could possibly have a negative impact on the individual, but I find this attitude condescending and limiting myself, as it seems to view the individual as an uninformed child. If informed adults want to smoke weed, or even take cocaine or other forms of stimulants, and they're aware of the risks and the possible side effects, what right should the state or any other constructed organisation of power have over them? It is the rights of man as an individual and as a thinking, feeling being that should trump the rights and powers of man-made institutions. Anything less is reductive. This for me is a libertarian point in many respects, but I'm comfortable with that as I find many aspects of libertarianism to be logical as well as fitting in with my value system. Anyway, I think I've reached the limit of how much I can write about the limits of freedom that society imposes on us and libertarianism for now. Basically, I think our bodies should be considered the property of our minds, and as long as we're not actively hurting others, no one should have a say in what we do with them, including consumption of drugs. I've put a thing in a new age of language, but I haven't written anything for that yet. It's just a bit of writing I've done on death. The theatre of death, decay and reality. I was recently staring into space, as I'm so often prone to do, contemplating and thinking about the nature of reality. What composes this strange realm we inhabit in our consciousness when I was struck by a thought, which can best sum up with the following phase. Death is the process through which news submerges, and time is the vessel. I found the thought a disturbing one, but interesting. The main crux of it being that after enough time as a conscious being, you experience and absorb so much knowledge and experience that, for want of a better term, you've seen it all, have experienced all that you can. That is, from your perspective, novelty decreases, leading often to pessimism, alienation, and in my case leads to tendency to nihilistic thought loops that go round and round a real resolution. Death is often thought as a wholly negative experience and concept in the Western world, associated with a lot of myths, stories of heaven, hell, final judgment. Even the Egyptians have the scales of truth. It seems as a species of conscious beings that we see death as a final summing up of the time we spent as vessels in space, through a prism of morality, a morality which is often, of course, dictated by the society we've been brought up in, as opposed to anything objective or grounded in absolute truth. What if we reframe the way you look at this? Death is, after all, on a purely physical and biological level, a process of matter going from one state, alive to dead, to another. I admit that this rendering of death may seem reductive, and probably is, but I want to explore this question from a purely cold level of reality as opposed to emotional one at first. Let's think of ourselves as vessels that move through time, space and time, creating ripples of effects based on reflection, and most importantly through action based on thoughts. Thoughts are a physical product of the brain. As far as we're aware, our conscious mind creates from the depth of the clarity of the unconscious. In this vision I saw that time and space interconnected as a process moving slowly forward, but that death was a part of the renewal of this interconnected time-space field. This is not a new idea. It's been expressed across religions, myth and art for aeons. I'm essentially searching for a new expression of the idea. It also perhaps helps me console myself with the harsh reality of death, which, after the cold, blunt reality of it, is as upsetting for those left behind the event. This is a series of stuff I just started writing on cybernetics and cyberpunk. The cybernetic veil. Cyberpunk and cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is a genre popularised by the likes of William Gibson imagined a world where humanity is hyperconnected through advanced technologies with dystopian power, reigning supreme with corrupt institutions, corporate and governmental, using these tools for surveillance and coercion of the populace. As a genre of science fiction, it's one of the most speculative and cynical about human nature and the limits of progress. I'd like to take the idea of cyberpunk aesthetics and culture and imagine some future scenarios in this piece to explore some future scenarios in this piece to explore human nature and possible real-life parallels and applications of cyberpunk technology. Melding the fictional and the real, donning the cybernetic veil for a deep dive into the imagination of humanity. So I think as I've written about death, perhaps I should consider the place of the mental world, memory and the personality in a hypothetical system or state of reality whereby physical death is only a state of matter and one that can be transcended. The brain and consciousness, for all intents and purposes, as far as we can tell, is simply a series of electrical impulses that creates a state we believe is consciousness. Now, that's an often repeated thought experiment, but suppose it is possible to map these brain states into computer memory or using some sort of computational storage. The question that throws up for many and a philosophically huge questions that have haunted philosophers since the dawn of the first thought. Take, for example, if you were to transfer your entire consciousness into a machine or a hard drive, a storage device, for example. Is that machine now you, or is you defined by the body you inhabit? Deleuze and Guattari dealt with this question on some level in their opus Anti-Oedipus, a text which I find very compelling to read, exploring psychoanalysis and what they created society to control. In Anti-Oedipus, they put forward the idea of the body without organs, and then I've just put a note here to expand on that because I don't want to write about it yet. To what level are we defined by matter? Could we somehow develop technology to transcend our biological destiny, to live, die, and decay? The post-human dream? Or would it really be a new nightmare of elite cyborgs and oppressed normals? And there's the final part I've written so far, why I'm not a nihilist. Nihilism is a structure of thought that posits that nothing in life has any meaning, that life is a meaningless, futile experience, and that there is no truth. It is the most pessimistic strain of thoughts have emerged from continental philosophy and from philosophers such as Nietzsche, whose famous quote, "God is dead," echoes for the ages as either a lament or a challenge, the death of ultimate meaning of truth. The symbolic order toppled. I do not consider myself a nihilist, at least not in the strict definition of the word anyway, and in this chapter I shall explain why nihilism in its bleakest or purest interpretation, i.e. negation of everything, is not a worldview I subscribe to. The clue to the issue of nihilism is it claims to deny the absolute while itself being a sort of absolutist worldview. It is a conceptual worldview that is so overwhelmingly stuck in its own negative navel gazing as to negate itself. I've developed the following comedic thought exercise to summarize this. Nihilist. I believe there is no intrinsic meaning to life. Absurdist. Yet you use words such as believe to imply a negation of meaning. Nihilist. Fuck you. I've meant it as a negation of meaning, not meaning itself. Absurdist. Do I have meaning to you then, even if it is an object of hatred? Nihilist. Smartass. Absurdist. Therefore, there is meaning that you assign to my existence. Therefore, there is meaning. Therefore, meaning is created by us. No. Nihilist. Therefore, leave me alone. This contradiction of dual meanings lies at the heart of it, and as such, I often personally regard true nihilism as the immature version of an existential position on life, an angst-ridden destructive worldview that looks at the chaos of the world and laments and despairs about picking itself out, without the necessary maturation phase into the developed laugh, which is the start of wisdom, to look at the nebulae raging in the darkest storm and to laugh endlessly and without cease. Once the thirst for life ceases, the end is already approaching. I think most thinkers have nihilistic tendencies, a tendency to deconstruct a sentence, an idea, a machine, a system of thinking. In fact, sometimes it is indeed necessary to deconstruct and to disassemble things, so as to learn of a higher order. But the problem with the nihilist is that he's an internal tinkerer. He only disassembles, only destroys, never builds, and makes with his hands something new from the rubble. And for this he limits himself. It is like the man who, perceiving the yin-yang, saw only the dark force of it, discounting half the whole picture. Pure nihilism is a wail of despair, is a human stripped bare without hope, wandering a desert of nothing, a void not of potential but of unending nothingness, a cold and dead forest. But one could wander but easily get lost. Of course, I write a metaphor and dramatise the startness of the worldview to emphasise its limits and that alone. Belief in nothing leads, unsurprisingly, nowhere. It is a dead end. Sometimes it can mean the death of the mind if you dive deep enough into its jet black depths. A little realism is all that's required to escape the mirror and murk. And that's as much as I've written so far, so just interested in getting feedback on it. I know probably only a few of you will made. This is like 13 minutes long video. I'm doing alright in Russia. Just on well, it's not a break now, but I don't have to do anything in a minute, so that's why I'm doing this video now. I've got a bit of free time. So yeah, leave some thoughts if you have any. I know that's a lot of, and it's a lot of editing to do on this piece of writing anyway, but yeah, leave any thoughts you have below. I'll probably make this public as well, might as well. I don't think I'll get that many views anyway, and if anyone's interested. In general, if you have any comments on what I've written, you know, a lot of it's sort of repeating things that have already been said before, but I'm sort of going through the first process of drafting what will be a book eventually, but this is just the sort of getting everything out of my head and then trying to search for the gems of which will, I guess, form the backbone of whatever the book will be.